Good morning again. Thanks to Reverend Aaron for inviting us to deliver this service. It prompted each of us to formally reflect on our 3-month sabbatical, focusing on how we grew and what we learned about ourselves, each other, and the larger world during our time away from work and school. In framing today's service, I enjoyed picking special hymns and readings. I chose the song, Find a Stillness, with a sense of irony. As you'll hear, the one thing we did not discover during our time away was stillness.
After years of toying with the idea of taking a family sabbatical, the fast approaching deadline of my sister Tevka soon graduating gave my mom the push to seriously consider the idea and ultimately make it happen. In the deciding months leading up to the trip, my mom kept quizzing my sister, dad, and me what our purposes of going to New Zealand would be. My answer was simple: to have fun and explore New Zealand. What could be better? 3 years ago, in coming of age, I decided my life purpose was to have fun, and it hasn't changed. So, I told my mom the trip would help me live out my life purpose. When I was informed I would have to write a reflection on how our time in New Zealand changed my life, I was stumped. While it was the coolest thing I've ever done, I couldn't come up with a life-changing answer. I felt like everyone I talked to was trying to make it deeper than it was, so I put it off for a while. But after lots of time pondering, thinking, and reflecting, thanks to my summer job as a lifeguard, I realized small ways my life has changed, and even more so, the things I learned about myself, like tendencies I have or how my values were cemented. I learned what I love most because of not having it. Traveling as a family, moving every couple of days didn't give much opportunity to make friends. I never missed home, but I definitely miss my friends, making me realize that they are on the top of my value list. At times I felt disconnected from my peers and just wanted to talk to someone my age. I grew an even larger appreciation for my teammates. I took every given chance to swim, but without my team, it didn't seem very fun anymore. I also found it much harder to motivate myself, but I savored the practices with various clubs where I was able to join in with kids. My value of the outdoors was only strengthened. The surroundings of New Zealand gave me plenty of options of fun things to do. I'm super grateful for the experiences I had, and they will stick with me forever. We were fortunate enough to witness the breathtaking Franz Josef Glacier on the heli hike we took. It is something I will never forget, even after the glaciers melted. I was many levels beneath the New Zealand kids and could never get the green wave. I loved learning to surf. I remember one day at the beach, Tevka and I both realized our friends back home were sitting at school, but we were lucky enough to be surfing in the ocean in a foreign country on the other side of the world. In the beginning of our stay, I got my PADI scuba certification. I had been diving once before in Mexico and was super happy I could see another drop of the vast ocean. Skydiving was the coolest thing I've done in my life. It surpassed my high expectations. I could see both islands, 2 national parks, the ocean, and the peak of Mount Tongariro all at once, while experiencing the biggest adrenaline rush of my life. The laid-back approach of the Kiwis suited my nature. It is so refreshing and natural to live life barefoot. I think people are also more open to new experiences, ideas, and things out of the ordinary. With my family's value-conscious mindset, we were looking to cut the bill on lodging. In country, we only spent 2 nights in actual hotels. I'm very happy we explored the alternatives. Camping made me feel much more connected to nature. I thought the hostels were super cool. The ones with specific themes were extra fun, and why not pay less for more? Kitchens were always included, often with bikes, ping pong, surfboards, games, music, and even steamy pud. We even spent a week touring in a VW bus. The Airbnbs were also fun to check out. But my favorite setup, though, was the workaway model, where you are provided lodging and meals in exchange for 2 to 5 hours of work a day, depending on the host's preferences. I found it very rewarding and a win-win. I thought it was nifty that strangers would open their homes, and I can envision myself doing the same in the future. To end, the most common response I received about our trip is along the lines of, "Wow, what an amazing once-in-a-lifetime experience." While it was an unforgettable experience, it wasn't once in a lifetime. I know I will explore many more places in the world. Many people say they wish they had the time or money to take a trip like ours, but that it just wouldn't be possible. However, it may not be as far out of reach as you may think. It will take time, effort, and even some planning, but the end product is well worth it. If you're able to take an opportunity like this, why not? In your one life, you should live the experience firsthand rather than just listening to me talk about it.
Our family sabbatical really was years in the making. As Torin mentioned, we had talked about it many times. In fact, we planted the seed with the girls over 10 years ago when we entered an online contest to spend a year as paid bloggers at the Great Barrier Reef. Needless to say, we didn't win that contest, but I did find our old video, which turns out to have been a fun bit of foreshadowing. So our journey really was a long-time dream made into reality, with adjustments to the duration and the destination. Traveling in New Zealand together for 3 months allowed me to make some discoveries about myself and my family, as well as reinforce several aspects of my worldview. The Neas Nin quote on the front of the order of service, "We don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are," sums up my interpretation of our experience. I see the world as a safe and friendly place full of interesting people and opportunities for learning and adventure. And because that's what we sought, that's precisely what I found down under. This outcome wasn't so much tied to the destination as it was to my expectations. I know this because we had a similar experience in July on a 6-day road trip to Idaho for a family wedding. There too, we found surprises around every corner, fascinating people, and beautiful scenery. I discovered Tevka and Torin were well suited for the type of travel we did, trying new foods, staying in budget lodging, and being ready for new situations. They didn't mind being frugal about our overnight stays, whether camping, sharing a bunk room with strangers, or sleeping in their hammocks. They're used to rustic accommodations after years of Girl Scout camp, RAGBRAI, and annual stays in what some consider rustic accommodations at Camp Unistar. Plus, their first Unitarian upbringing has led them to be open to life, expecting to love, and prepared to serve. Workaway stays were one way we found to serve, a win-win arrangement where we would work for a host family and get lodging and at least one meal a day in return. The chance to meet locals and take part in their daily life was a real treat. Picking blueberries and weeding at Living Fruits in Northland, as well as learning about sustainable gardening from a French immigrant, and meeting new friends in Akaroa near Christchurch were my favorite experiences. I felt that each day of our travels presented opportunities to meet new guides, teachers who could show me something about our world and how to focus and flourish in it. We saw so many entrepreneurial businesses, small operations, often family-run, where folks used their strengths and passions to share their love of country and the outdoors with travelers from around the world. I simultaneously admired their spirit and was reminded that I'm grateful for my stable desk job as a data integrations analyst, and equally thankful that I was given the opportunity to leave that behind for 3 months. We learned about ourselves and the ways that living together 24/7 can strain family interactions. We solidified our understanding of various family phenomena like revolving circles and the monkey. A revolving circle is when it takes extra time to move on to the next place because someone in the family starts another task while waiting to leave, and therefore isn't ready to go when the person they were waiting on is finally ready. The monkey is a bad mood that hops from one carrier to another, oftentimes after hours spent in the close confines of a car. Each time Todd or I shared one of our loop tape stories with fellow travelers, how we met and our courtship, how we came to be on this trip together, or where we'd recently ventured, I heard the story, as my teenagers seemed to, as a recycled soundbite. I'm using this learning as a reminder to only share relevant stories with interested audiences and to listen to other stories. Other stories provide fresh takes on the world around me. I discovered my teenage daughters have grown into capable individuals with their own ideas and impressions. Buying groceries, cooking, keeping daily journals in a more timely fashion than the parents, and going on bike rides were a few ways Tevka and Torin developed their independence. Plus, Torin didn't want to give up her running or swimming workouts while we were away, so she found ways to fit them in. She swam 27 times in 18 different pools during our sabbatical. Our favorite days were when a local pool was close enough to our lodging that Torin could ride her skateboard there on her own, or take Tevka along for a strength workout, and Todd and I could sleep in. Independence is a good thing. I also realize that I'm looking forward to the slower pace that may come in a couple years when Todd and I are empty nesters. Next time we take a sabbatical, perhaps we truly will find a stillness.
Before we left for New Zealand, and all along the way, I heard so many people say we'd get much more out of traveling around a foreign country than we would get out of school. I would laugh and say, of course, but I never really stopped to think about why. I knew I was having an incredible time, but I wasn't focused on what I learned. So, I took this service as an opportunity to reflect and challenge myself. And it was a challenging question. I didn't even know where to begin. To answer what I learned about myself and the world during our 3-month family sabbatical. Skydiving and scuba diving were 2 new activities I was fortunate enough to experience in New Zealand. They were also both intimidating, even downright scary. With skydiving, I wasn't super worried. A bit nervous, yes. I mean, yeah, there was the part where the plane continued to climb and climb, all the way up to 13,000 feet. So high, we could see the North Island from our spot on the south, and everything below was microscopic. Okay, I'll admit I was nervous. But the rush from jumping out of a plane, literally falling out of the sky, was so worth it. Absolutely exhilarating. My life was in the hands of the tandem dude, so I could take everything in. It was ethereal up there. Time stood still. 40 seconds of freefall felt like 10. It went by much too fast. And floating down the rest of the way was surreal. When my feet touched the earth again, I knew skydiving was the coolest thing I'd ever done. Scuba diving was much less adrenaline, but I was more scared than I was when skydiving. For this, it was all on me. I had to know how to check the regulator, keep track of my air, not get lost, and if anything went wrong, if I lost air or didn't set up my equipment correctly, it's not like I could cry for help. So, when I descended into the ocean blue, I was scared, to say the least. I struggled to equalize my ears, but I got it eventually. Once at the bottom, I took a glance above me, and seeing the millions of liters of water over my head didn't help. For the duration of the dive, I breathed quicker than I should have and came up a full 15 minutes before the rest of the group. Even though I wasn't the most comfortable under the water, I had seen a whole new world. We saw manta rays, lobster, small squid, red snappers, and a whole lot more. Even only 10 meters underwater, there was a vast, beautiful ecosystem flourishing, and breathing underwater feels very unlike anything I'd ever done before. Both skydiving and scuba diving taught me that even if you're afraid to do something, especially if you're afraid to do something, you should get out of your comfort zone and do it anyway. In my experience, you won't regret it. Of course, I knew the world was big, but traveling around New Zealand made me realize, even more so, how incredibly vast and varied it is. Even a small island in the Pacific has multitudes of ecosystems and many different cultures. We spent 3 months, and yet there's still so much we didn't see. While in New Zealand, I constantly heard how lucky I was to be able to take this trip and have these once-in-a-lifetime experiences. It's true. I was fortunate to be able to take an 87-day trip with my family around a country as cool as New Zealand. But it wasn't once in a lifetime. This trip taught me, more than anything, that if you want to make an opportunity for yourself, it's within your reach.
What I learned about the world. Americans are a minority. As tourists, we found ourselves barely in the top 10 countries of visitors to New Zealand. The Chinese are ascendant. Watching the movie Crazy Rich Asians during our first week in country, I thought it was over the top. Then I learned from a real estate agent that laws were enacted last fall to ban foreign ownership of property going forward. At auction sales of property, no price was too high. We saw firsthand that hotel rooms in Queenstown quintupled during Chinese New Year celebrations, and Asian tourists filled the streets. The influence of England is still strong. New Zealand was the last predominantly Anglo country to establish independence from the Crown. Here in the U.S., we have 243 years of separation, but in New Zealand, only 72. The association to the Commonwealth allows easier immigration from South Africa, Ireland, Australia, India, Canada, and of course, Great Britain. Nowhere were the ties to England more evident than the World War memorials. New Zealand sacrificed more men per capita than any country during the First World War, and the museum displays to mark the 100-year anniversary were there yet during our visit. On the wall of New Zealand's only Unitarian church in Auckland, 42 names are listed as killed in action. I inquired as to the size of the congregation at the time and was told it was about 175. I had no idea that the cultural ties of New Zealand are far closer to Hawaii than they are to Australia, its closest neighbor. The Maoris are Polynesians, and though they only number 15% of the population, the art, names of places, and lifestyle carry a large influence. I learned from New Zealanders that the relationship Australia has to the Aboriginal population is similar to ours with the Native Americans. Cultures destroyed or crushed rather than celebrated and integrated into modern times. Now, one of the funniest experiences for me was seeing how art imitates life. Long before our trip was planned, we had enjoyed the movie Hunt for the Wilder People, about a young boy's adventures in the wilds of New Zealand. At one point, he meets a fellow wearing a tinfoil hat and going on about all sorts of different conspiracy theories. Well, it turns out I met 4 or 5 different characters who were real-life tinfoil hat types, explaining time travel, Middle-earth people, the radiation effects of cell phones on your brain, the worldwide Masonic cabal, how exploiting geothermal energy would cause New Zealand to collapse into the earth, and on and on and on. What probably stood out the most to me, though, was how a government of the people can listen to and work for the people. A plastic bag ban went into effect at groceries 1 month before our arrival, and I heard not one complaint in the stores we visited. And according to Tevka, we visited far too many. For the good of the earth, no more plastic bags, no big deal. When I happened to slice into the side of my thumb retrieving a backpack from our car trunk, I learned how New Zealand's national accident insurance works. As a foreigner, I paid a $28 paperwork fee and had my wound cleaned and glued within 90 minutes. They simply needed my name, address, and phone number. And the crazy thing is that had I been in an auto wreck or fallen off a mountainside and needed care for weeks, it would have still been the small paperwork fee. And for a citizen of New Zealand, not even that. Accidents happen, and in New Zealand, you can live with no worries about medical care for them. Now, for all the fun and carefree experiences we had, though, 5 days before we left, an Australian anarchist attacked and killed 51 people in a Christchurch mosque. No nirvana exists in this world, but how we respond to evil does matter. The response in New Zealand was exemplary. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern donned a hijab in solidarity and pushed for real change to curtail additional mass shootings. The media refused to publish the shooter's name or manifesto, and people responded with calls for action versus resignation. Within 1 week, Parliament passed sweeping new firearm regulations by a vote of 119 to 1. These were targeted towards semi-automatic weapons with large capacity magazines, affecting 1% of the current guns owned in New Zealand. $100 million was approved to fund 250 buyback events, and the gun owners have amnesty until year end to comply. Gun licenses were reduced from 10 years to 5, and owners must pass a character test that shows they are fit and proper to own a gun. The opposition to the new regulations was given 1 day at Parliament to voice their concerns. A blend of capitalism and socialism can and does work. New Zealand was clean, vibrant, and healthy. A place that is open to life and expecting to love. Now, please rise in body or spirit and join us in singing hymn 1064, Blue Boat Home.